Hey guys, Drifter here. Welcome to Overwatch In Depth. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about Hanzo, everybody's favorite defense hero, everybody's favorite alt DPS, the guy that pretty much you don't get to play in ranked unless you want your entire team to flame you. But despite that, I do think that Hanzo is a viable character in some situations, and he can be a good character depending on your skill level. And there are skills to master and things to learn about Hanzo that do warrant an in-depth episode instead of a more meta-relevant hero. We'll start off with the basic stuff, such as he has 200 health, and even though that's normal for DPS, he's targeted very often and kind of squishy. As Hanzo, you're not going to be any more popular for the enemy team than you will be for your own team. So they're going to try to take you out of the fight very, very quickly by assuming that you have low mobility, and a lot of Hanzos do, which is kind of a shame because he can wall run up any flat surface for a considerable distance, and that makes Hanzo unexpectedly mobile. You can run up the wall and then jump off of it. You can jump and then catch onto the wall and run up. You can climb up ledges. You can get up high. There's a lot of interesting mobility things you can do with Hanzo's wall run that make him much more mobile and much more escapable than people really give him credit for. And I noticed that good Hanzos reposition themselves often to make the most use of this. They also use it to escape. But let's talk about his bow and arrow and his damage. When fully charged, the bow will deal 125 damage per arrow. When not charged at all, it decreases down to 29. And of course, the longer you hold it down, the longer it charges. You have half a second between shots, and it also takes half a second to draw the string all the way back and charge the bow. That's going to give you 60 rounds per minute if you're doing fully charged shots, or it's going to give you 120 rounds per minute if you're just spamming them everywhere. You do get a small self-slow during the charge or pullback as you work, because you're holding this as you walk around and steadying yourself. And most importantly, the bow can headshot people. This is really one of the things that makes Hanzo Hanzo, is that headshots will double the damage up to 250 per hit, which means that headshots can kill most non-tank heroes instantly. Every single one of the DPS heroes can be instantly deleted with a bow and arrow headshot. That includes Reaper at 250 health. Many of the defense heroes, except for perhaps Bastion, can be deleted with one headshot, and you can do very impressive damage to tanks with one single headshot. He's kind of an alternative sniper, and the more headshots you can get, the better Hanzo you're going to be. The hitbox is pretty generous on them for the most part, but it does take a little bit of finesse because they are projectiles, and they do arc regardless of how much you charge the bow, so it's not quite as easy to do as Widowmaker. Hanzo's Sonic Arrow ability is kind of like the Great Value or light version of Widowmaker's ultimate. It marks enemies in a 10-meter radius and has a 10-second cooldown. While you're charging your bow, you just hit the ability button and it will swap to the Sonic Arrow and shoot straight ahead, and anything in a 10-meter radius is marked on the radar and you can see them through the walls. It makes it really easy for you to shoot people around corners and for you to make callouts, and for your teammates can see them too, so it's incredibly useful. The cooldown on it is very long at 20 seconds, and I do believe that this is fair. It stops Hanzos from spamming and just kind of getting free vision on the enemy team forever. Of note, the arrow deals the same amount of damage. It has the same travel velocity, the same speed and everything. It's literally the exact same arrow, so you can headshot and kill people just as easily. Scatter Arrow, however, is one of your bread and butter abilities. The Scatter Arrow, when you hit that ability while you're holding it down, allows Hanzo to equip a special arrow that splits into 6 arrows that bounce up to 3 times, if I'm not mistaken, and they just kind of bounce everywhere. Each one of them can deal up to 75 damage on a full charge, but 22 at a distance. Most people assume the Scatter Arrow has a fixed amount of damage, but like the other arrows, the further you pull back the bow and charge it, the more damage it does. So even on the Scatter Arrow, you want to take your time to do a full draw, because 75 times 6 arrows means that you can deal a ton of damage, which is going to be 450 we'll talk about in a second. The base arrow can headshot, but the split arrows cannot. You really shouldn't be trying to hit the champion directly with these anyway, and it has a relatively short cooldown of 10 seconds, so you can use the ability often. One of the most common ways to use this ability is if an enemy is rushing you, or if they're somewhat close proximity, you shoot, and purposefully miss them such that your arrow lands about a foot in front of them, maybe a meter, maybe less, and bounces up, and all the arrows will scatter and bounce in that direction. They pretty much all bounce straight forward and hit the enemy in the face, and if all 6 of your arrows hit, that's 450 damage. Even if less than half of them hit, you can easily take out any DPS with this sort of foot splash technique. The closer they are to you, the harder it's going to be. It's much easier when they're at a distance or at a medium distance, so that the arrows almost always bounce at a 45-degree angle directly into their face. And that is one of the skills that you will need to master to be a good Hanzo, is that sort of foot-to-face bounce and kill everybody technique. Though I will say, do not waste your scatter arrows. This is your only safety net. I mean, compared to the other snipers in the game, you can treat Pharah like a sniper, but she's got splash damage. Widowmaker has an assault rifle that deals low damage but finishes people off. Ana has biotic grenades. As Hanzo, you've got your scatter arrow, and it's on a 10-second cooldown. So if you miss it and somebody gets in your face, or you really need that sort of crazy AoE burst damage, it's going to be on cooldown and you're not going to have it. I think that you should be very precise and calculating about how you use these, and you should absolutely not waste them whatsoever. Moving along, let's talk about Hanzo's dragons, or his ultimate. It is a huge area of effect spiraling twin dragons that moves across the map. It can go through walls, and it has infinite range, basically meaning that it can go through the whole map. It's actually kind of funny sometimes, because if you're not paying attention, you can send it through the enemy spawn and kill them as they're spawning. And one of the best ways to do it is use it in choke points or go through walls so that the enemies have minimal reaction time to dodge the dragons. The damage is very high at 200 per second. The tick rate on it is less than a second. It ticks very fast, mind you. It's pretty much a continuous amount of damage that you take while inside of the dragons. And interestingly, it still fires the initial arrow too, so you can headshot a team with the arrow and the dragons will still come out. However, it's not an instant shot. There's a 1.4 second casting time and wind up on that, during which you can be killed and your ultimate can be cancelled. The ultimate can be deflected by Genji, which will drive your teammates up a wall. You definitely don't want to have the dragons deflected back at you. And it can be eaten by D.Va if she's close enough to eat that initial arrow. I think that's kind of coded to follow, or at least spawn from the initial arrow and move outwards. So anything that you can do to screw up the initial arrow should affect the dragons, should there be more champions released in the future. And oddly enough, they can be out-healed by Zenyatta, but barely for the most part. Maybe good if you had Zenyatta when a whole team was splashed by Ana's grenade, but Zenyatta heals for 300 hit points per second in his Transcendence, and the dragons are 200 hit points per second, so Zenyatta should still be able to out-heal the dragons. That's not considering any additional damage coming in, or biotic grenades, or modifiers, or anything like that. It almost goes without saying, but it's in depth for a reason. The dragons have a very loud casting sound and are often quite easy to dodge. I mean, you hear Hanzo's call out, it's one of the most famous Overwatch memes. It's very difficult to miss. They're bright red if they're on the enemy team. They're pretty obvious. They're not hard to miss. And they combo insanely well with Zarya's Graviton Surge, or in case of that, the great value version, Arisa's little Graviton balls that she uses to pull people off the sides of maps. I don't think that Hanzo's a super meta-relevant hero, but if you're in a duo and you have a Zarya that's willing to save her ultimate and combo with you, you can get a ton of triple, quadra, penta, and full team wipe kills with the dragons and the Graviton Surge, because Graviton Surge will suck them in, the dragons just wears down their health and usually kills the entire team if there's no Zenyatta ultimate. So the question you're probably asking me is, why play Hanzo? Why bother with this character? He's the worst character in the game. He's the most annoying character in the game. If I pick him, my team is going to tilt. Why not just play Widowmaker, because she does the same job but better? And I'm going to say Hanzo's different than Widowmaker because he's more of a mid-range sniper / pick hero. Widowmaker is definitely a pick hero, but she's more of a very long-range sniper. She likes to get her shots so far away that most heroes can't engage. Some good Widows can do close range. But he offers different sorts of utility and more overall DPS. For instance, if you need to crack Ryan's shield, or if you just need to constantly spam arrows down there or send the scatter arrows around the corner, a good Hanzo can do that much better than a good Widowmaker can for sniping. He is essentially similar to Widowmaker, even with the two radar abilities, albeit one's an ultimate and one is not. in that he gets less picks but offers more DPS and a little bit more overall mobility. I know Widowmaker has her grappling hook, but Hanzo can just run up anything with no cooldown to worry about. That being said, Hanzo is unforgiving and unreliable. If you miss an arrow with Hanzo, that is much more punishing than missing shots with McCree or Soldier or Reaper. And sometimes enemy teams have team comps that make your life very hard as Hanzo. Sometimes people move funny and they're difficult to hit. Your follow-up shots take a long time. He just doesn't fit well into many team comps, and he doesn't counter people as hard as he is countered. So if you play Hanzo in ranked, you need to be prepared to change off of Hanzo because he's not going to fit into too many traditional team comps, and you have to be doing exceptionally well for your team to feel the impact. If you start missing arrows, if you start not being like a god tier Hanzo, you're going to get flamed, and for good reason. After playing Hanzo a good bit, mostly in quick play, because I'm not ready to break him out in rank just yet, even when I'm doing good, even when I'm getting all gold medals, even when I'm getting good picks and good shots, it does not feel as impactful as other characters. Your teammate will not feel how well you're doing when you're playing Hanzo. So at the end of the episode, I want to talk about Hanzo counters. He is countered pretty dadgum hard by Winston, because Winston just jumps in and gets in his face. Now, a really good Hanzo that can get these close range arrows can put a lot of damage on Winston, but with the bubble used properly, Winston should be able to kill Hanzo. Genji is a nearly perfect counter to Hanzo with the hypermobility, the reflect, the shurikens at close range. Tracer, essentially the same thing. Almost any of the really fast characters will counter Hanzo. D.Va's an interesting one because she can eat the arrows, she can eat the ultimate, she gets in his face, she can spam his health down a lot faster than he can chunk her. And one unusual and very tilty one is that Lucio can also often counter Hanzo, because Lucio is self-healing, and unless Hanzo gets a close-range headshot, which admittedly is improbable, Lucio can just use his boop gun to wear him down over time and punch him and bonk him around and push him off the map and do a lot of annoying things. As Hanzo, I've had a lot of Lucios come get in my face and just slap me around, and it is extremely annoying. As for who Hanzo counters, who you should consider playing him into, Hanzo counters bad Widowmakers very hard. You've probably seen me really punish some bad Widowmakers here. A good Widowmaker will make you cry, but if there's a bad Widow on the enemy team that's getting by just because, I don't know, we just haven't given her much focus, you can make her life miserable. He counters Bastion very hard because of the high burst damage. He counters Reaper primarily because of the range, but Reaper will murder you in close quarters combat. Zenyatta's a similar story in that Hanzo just has a sort of range DPS advantage. And Torbjorn. He does take out Torbjorn's turrets quite easily and punishes the little troll. He can do good work against Roadhog and Zarya, kind of depending. And he counters almost anybody with low health depending on your skill level if you're able to get the one-shot headshot deletions. Guys, that is all for Hanzo in Depth. I hope that you learned something useful. If you did, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. And if you're going to play Hanzo in Ranked, you better play a damn good Hanzo.